quickly ask a question, Ken? A question has popped up from Mr. Andrew Parkinson. He says, love your work, Ken, but why on earth did you agree to do this when United are playing? Seriously, though, after Charlton, referencing Kes, and Cantona, of course, who you worked with.
Yes.
But what do you make of the work of Marcus Rashford and the way that he has held the government to account in an extraordinary way? What do you think of him?
Well, I think he's a very good guy, a principled man who has said what is plainly obvious, and he's been taken up because he's a footballer, and he's measured up to it. But it's the idea that you need a footballer to tell the Prime Minister and the government what's happening, that there is, I mean, they instilled poverty. They've used hunger as a weapon through their brutal social security system and benefit system, where, we did a little film about it, and the benefit system is a series of traps for people who are desperate for, with nothing, traps, so that their benefits can be stopped or reduced, and maybe stopped for six weeks for people with children who have nothing. And how are they meant to feed themselves? So, of course, the food banks have arisen, and they're only they'll only feed you for a few days. So the government knows, Ian Duncan Smith, the architect of this monstrosity, he knows he's imposing hunger on children. He knows that. So for Johnson to say, oh dear, this was pointed out to us by Marcus Rashford, is such a blatant lie. I mean, that is worse than them pretending they don't know, because it is, their stupidity is matched by their malice, really.
Yes, I think they fuse into one kind of glorious or inglorious state of indifference to what other people think. I wanted to talk to you about that. Now we've got onto that. I want to talk to you about your two late gems. I mean, what I would say is extraordinary about, I want to talk about these two amazing movies. Daniel Blake, of course, 2016, about austerity, about food banks, about political indifference to working people, and your most recent film, which is, I think, one of your very best. It's an absolute belter. Sorry We Missed You. And I find it remarkable that you made these movies after we'd all been worried. We'd heard reports that you were going to retire. We'd heard after you made your documentary about the NHS, The Spirit of 45, that you were going to hang up your camera and you were never going to do it again. And then you come, I don't want to sound like I'm, blowing smoke up your ass, as they say in California, but and I should also say I've had the unfortunate distinction of being mocked in the Daily Mail for crying in the middle of Daniel Blake for the food bank scene. But was it do you think, no, I'm going to come back and I've got something to say? Was it like that, or how did those two films come about?
Well, it's always we, as you know. I mean, it's we. I mean, Paul wrote them, and Rebecca produced them, and I mean, we talk about work all the time, and been talking about these subjects, and so we did Paul and I did a bit of quick first research together on Daniel Blake, and then Paul wrote the characters, and we worked on the script, and we were able to get it made. So I think what got us going really was this extraordinary, on the one hand, secret that there was this massive issue of people facing starvation through government policy, and yet hundreds of thousands of people knew it, but yet it wasn't talked about. And so we just felt it was a story that had to be told, and Paul wrote a wonderful script, and we were, the people who interpreted it and everybody worked and did a lovely job, and it felt an important film to make, and we were very lucky to be able to make it. And then following on from that, I mean, the key thing about work and how work has changed, and how the concept of security and insecurity now is at the heart of so many people's experience. that insecurity of income, insecurity of work. You don't know whether you're going to be in a job or not. You don't know how long you're going to be working or not. You know you can't stop to go on holiday, and if you're sick, you won't get paid. And this great insecurity that is spread. I mean, there was a figure around about the time we were doing the second film, Sorry We Missed You, where I think we found 3/4 of the new jobs were insecure work, gig economy or whatever you call it, bogus self-employed or 0 hours, no security. And that sense of insecurity, that sense of frustration, I think has permeated society in a way that is certainly the stability I knew, even going through the war, was stable or horrible in many ways, but some aspects of it were stable. And certainly the 50s were very stable. But now the insecurity people face. And again, we heard terrible stories. I mean, again, we heard the story of a driver, and the drivers are very much in the picture now, delivery drivers. A delivery driver working for one of the big companies. This is when we were making the film and just afterwards. And he was diabetic. And he had a hospital appointment, and he went, despite telling them he was going, and he was fined £150. Because self-employed driver fined £150. He didn't go to any future appointments, and he collapsed and died. And he was 53, and he left a widow and a son, and a lovely woman, his wife, and she had to move house because they had no money. And whether the company that was employing him sent a bunch of flowers or not, I don't know, but that was the extent of their commitment, their liability. And we think this is so appalling, and yet, of course, it is thriving now under lockdown. That level of exploitation is thriving. And so it was stories like that, and Paul heard so many more, and we both heard so many more. And the same with the care workers, paid a pittance, and doing work that you and I find hugely difficult, sensitive, dealing with people in the most intimate ways, paid buttons, and what a crime that is.
Yes. And what I find extraordinary is, if I can bring it back to you for a second, you yourself have brought this to the public's attention in the most extraordinary way. Do you ever think, why is this up to me to do this again? I mean, do you ever think, why can't these young whippersnappers in their 50s and 60s, these younger filmmakers, make this? Why is it? Do you ever think, is on my shoulders to do this again? And I mean, it's remarkable. It's wonderful that you are still making these urgent films, which are capturing the public's imagination, not the imagination of our political classes who managed to sort of look the other way, but the public's imagination. Do you ever think, is it me? I mean, I've got a question here from Jeanette Burton-McFall. How do left-wing filmmakers get programs made or films made in today's climate? Do you ever think, well, it would be great if some younger filmmakers could make films like this? Are they being stifled? Are they being erased or marginalized? Do you think younger filmmakers who want to follow in your footsteps?
You can't blame the filmmakers. There's a lot of talented people around. There always are. I mean, there's one thing you learn, when you do films, wherever you go, you find people of great talent. There are many talented film directors about, many talented writers, and don't forget the writers. Writers are always there for the film. There are so many people. The issue is that you can't get funding. That our industry, you know this better than I do, Peter, and because you see so many more films, but the industry is geared to looking towards the Atlantic. It's not geared to looking to Europe. The co-productions with European filmmakers, European producers and distributors, that's where we've made our films. But I think, I've been lucky for half a century. Began with getting a job at the BBC during the 60s and working on the Wednesday play, and being able to do a couple of productions that got us noticed. And that was a huge stroke of luck. So I had a calling card, after Cathy Come Home and Up the Junction. It got some notoriety and some public notice, and I had a calling card. And then we were a huge stroke of luck with meeting again through Tony Garnett and Roger Smith, I worked with the BBC, meeting Barry Hines,
Yes.
and his writing, and a huge stroke of luck of being able to make his book, A Kestrel for a Knave, into Kes. And that again was a massive stroke of good fortune. So very early on, I had that little CV. And so it's meant that there's enough credibility in the industry to be able to raise a small amount of money. And we're very cheap, that's it. We don't spend much. We work very simply. So that means we've been able to make a film and then make another film, and they've made enough money to get people their investment back, and then another film, and just to keep going. So we've got a little niche. Young filmmakers don't have that. They don't have the fortune of working with creative people in television who have access to the airwaves, because they're sat on by producers, executive producers, this and that and the other, every executive with something to say. So they don't. Kathy Come Home would never be made now. Someone would intervene by email.
I'm sure everybody would say the same thing. Everybody would say the same thing. Everybody said. I wonder if you would agree with me that, I mean, I have been guilty of this, and it's a cliche. I've used the word Loachian to discuss the phrase social realism. I've never asked you this. What do you think about this word? I mean, I use it myself. I've used it so often I don't even think about it. Social realist, social, not realist, social realist, which is now many and many a time I've watched a movie and thought, this is something which is very well made, and undoubtedly this is a movie by somebody who undoubtedly has watched a lot of your movies, but it's the style and not the substance. They have absorbed the manner of a social realist movie, but they don't want particularly to put the arrowhead of changing something at the end of it. And I wondered if you agreed with that.
There's a lot of things involved in that, really, Peter. It's a complicated thing but a good point. I think there's as you say, the manner of trying to capture life, and there are various ways of doing that you could write down, about performance, about light, about lenses, about, there's a way of doing it. But what is key is it's never the how, it's always the why. The how is a kind of interesting, but it's a kind of, it's a secondary question. The important question is why. Why do we tell this story? And it has to have a significance beyond its simple narrative. It has to penetrate to the root of something. And I think that's central. And it begins with a sense, it begins with politics. It begins with a view of history. It begins with trying to unpick the substance of how society operates. Because until you do that, you don't know what story to tell. I mean, you can find 100 stories. How do you choose between them? It's like apples in an orchard. You can pick one. Why pick that one? You've got to pick one that actually goes to the root, and find the struggle in it, find the conflict. What are the elements that are in conflict? And do they really represent the elements in the social elements that are in conflict in society? So it's interesting, when you were talking about history before, and I agree with you, but without a sense of history, I don't see how you can judge what stories to tell. And people often write and say, oh, there's a great story here and there's a great story there, and they're interesting, but they don't get to the core. They don't get to the heart, and that's absolutely what you have to do. As for the terms, I mean, they're cliches, really, and you never want someone to say, I'd like to see a social realist film tonight. It's just I'd like to sit and see a story. I'd like to see people I want to meet. I'd like to see people on the screen I can relate to. I want to understand them. I want to share their lives, to suffer with them, laugh with them, cry with them, fight with them, whatever, So I think provided people are prepared to be drawn in, and have an open mind, really, that's all you can ask.
Yes.